What happens when Brie Larson walks onto The View and realizes the conversation isn't an interview, but a silent test she never agreed to? Subscribe the Echo View and comment, because what unfolds today inside this studio will split opinions, ignite headlines, and leave the audience frozen in disbelief. The studio lights of The View burn hotter than usual, as if they're feeding off something unspoken. The audience is already restless, a soft wave of anticipation moving through the crowd before a single word is spoken. Brie Larson steps out from backstage, composed, smiling, but there's a carefulness in her eyes, the kind that comes from knowing interviews can shift direction without warning. Whoopi Goldberg sits at the center panel, calm, unreadable, hands folded like she's already decided the rhythm of what's about to happen. Behar flips through her notes, glancing up with a half-smirk. Sunny Hostin watches closely, analytical, like she's reading between every second of silence. Brie Larson is here with us today, Whoopi says, her voice warm but carrying weight underneath it. We're glad you joined us. The audience applauds, but it feels controlled, like it's waiting for permission to fully erupt. Brie smiles politely. Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here. For a moment, it feels normal, almost safe. Then Whoopi tilts her head slightly, that familiar shift she makes when the conversation is about to turn. So, Whoopi begins, you've been very vocal over the years about representation in Hollywood, about responsibility. And a lot of people admire that, and a lot of people also don't. A ripple moves through the audience. Brie's smile tightens just a fraction. Joy leans in. That's putting it lightly. A few nervous laughs break out. Whoopi continues, unhurried. Some folks say when celebrities speak like they're carrying the weight of an entire industry, it can come off disconnected from regular people. Brie nods slowly, absorbing it. I think it depends on context. I've always tried to be honest about my experiences, not speak for everyone. Sunny interjects gently but firmly. But do you think Hollywood actually listens to that honesty? Or is it just branding? That word lands heavier than intended. Brie's eyes flick briefly toward Sunny, then back to Whoopi. I don't think my intention has ever been branding. It's been responsibility. If I have a platform, I try to use it thoughtfully. A pause. Whoopi leans forward slightly. But responsibility to who, Brie? The question cuts sharper than the tone suggests. Brie exhales, still composed, but the air around her changes. To people watching, to younger actors, to people who feel invisible in the industry. Joy raises an eyebrow. And what about the people who feel talked down to? A few audience members react audibly now, and oh, under someone's breath. Brie's smile fades completely for the first time. I've never intended to talk down to anyone, she says carefully. If that's how it came across, I think that says more about perception than intention. Whoopi doesn't move immediately. She watches Brie like she's weighing something unspoken. Then, perception is everything in this business, Whoopi says quietly. Especially when you're on a stage this big. The studio feels tighter now. The laughter is gone. Brie shifts slightly in her chair. I understand that. But I also think sometimes perception gets shaped by narratives that are already decided before you even speak. That line changes the energy. Sunny leans in again. Are you suggesting the media misrepresents you? Brie doesn't answer immediately. The pause stretches just long enough to feel intentional. I'm saying, she replies, that sometimes people look for a version of you that confirms what they already believe. A murmur spreads through the audience. Whoopi's expression finally shifts, not anger, not agreement, but something more precise. Focus. So when criticism comes your way, Whoopi says, you feel it's about misunderstanding, not accountability? Brie looks directly at her now. I think accountability is important, she says. But I also think there's a difference between accountability and expectation to be perfect. A silence drops so clean it almost feels physical. Joy breaks it with a soft, almost reluctant laugh. Nobody's asking you to be perfect, Brie. But people do expect awareness. Brie nods slowly, but her voice sharpens slightly. I am aware. I'm very aware of how quickly things can be twisted. That's when Whoopi leans back, folding her arms. And how quickly people can be dismissed, she says. The studio reacts instantly, this time louder. The tension is no longer subtle. Brie blinks once. I don't dismiss people. Whoopi meets her gaze. Not intentionally. But impact doesn't always care about intention. A beat. Brie's hands tighten slightly in her lap. The camera catches it. The audience feels it. For the first time, the conversation is no longer about Hollywood. It's about her. And everyone in the room knows it. Whoopi continues, voice steady but firmer now. Let me ask you something directly. Do you think there's a gap between how you see yourself and how some of the audience sees you? The question hangs like a spotlight she didn't step into willingly. Brie doesn't look away, but something inside her shifts, subtle, restrained, but real. I think, she says carefully, that gap exists for everyone in public life. The version of you people build isn't always the full picture. Sunny nods slightly. Joy looks unconvinced. The audience waits like it's holding its breath. Whoopi studies her for a long moment. Then she says quietly, that might be true. A pause. But the question is whether you're willing to sit in that gap without trying to control it. The air goes still. Brie doesn't respond immediately. And in that silence, something in the studio begins to tilt. Like a conversation that was once controlled is now slipping into something neither side fully owns anymore. The silence after Whoopi's last words doesn't fade. It settles. Heavy. Intentional. Like the studio itself has leaned in closer to hear what comes next. Brie Larson keeps her posture steady, but something in her expression has changed. The calm isn't gone. It's been tightened, like a door quietly locked from the inside. Whoopi watches her without blinking, not pushing, not retreating. Just waiting. Joy Behar shifts in her chair, sensing the temperature has dropped enough that even a joke won't land safely. Sunny Hostin glances down at her notes, then back up, deciding whether to step in or stay out. Brie finally speaks. I'm not trying to control anything, she says, voice measured. I think there's a difference between controlling a narrative and wanting to be understood correctly. A few audience members nod, unsure if they're agreeing with her or simply reacting to the tension. Whoopi tilts her head slightly. But understood correctly sounds a lot like control when you're in the public eye. That line lands differently this time. Not sharp, precise. Brie exhales slowly. Then what am I supposed to do? Just accept that people misunderstand me and say nothing. Joy leans forward. Sometimes, yeah. That's part of it. A soft reaction from the audience, half laughter, half surprise. Brie turns her gaze toward Joy for the first time directly. Even when it's inaccurate, Joy shrugs slightly. Especially when it's inaccurate. Because the more you fight it, the bigger it gets. A pause. Brie looks back to Whoopi, as if anchoring herself there instead. I don't agree with that. Whoopi doesn't respond immediately. The control of the room still feels like it's in her hands. But now she's letting it breathe. Sunny finally steps in, voice calm but probing. Brie, do you think part of the backlash you receive comes from people feeling like celebrities are out of touch when they talk about social responsibility? Brie nods once. I think that's fair. I think that concern is real. Then she adds carefully, but I also think it becomes unfair when it turns into assuming bad intent. That word, intent, hangs again like a fault line. Whoopi leans forward slightly. Let's stay with that, she says. Because intent is what people hide behind when impact is uncomfortable. The audience reacts, louder now. The energy is no longer passive. It's engaged. Brie's eyes narrow just slightly, not in anger, but in focus. I'm not hiding behind intent. I'm trying to explain it. Whoopi nods slowly. And I'm trying to tell you that explanation doesn't always matter to people who feel unheard. A long beat. Brie's voice softens, but becomes more deliberate. I hear that. I really do. But if we remove intent completely from the conversation, then we're only reacting to perception. And perception isn't always truth. A ripple moves through the audience again, this time more divided. Joy lets out a small breath. This is getting philosophical fast. A few laughs break the tension, but it doesn't fully dissolve it. Whoopi doesn't smile. Instead, she asks, have you ever been in a situation where you realized someone's perception of you might be painful, but still valid from their perspective? The question shifts the direction again. Less accusation now. More confrontation with nuance. Brie pauses longer this time. I think so, she admits. Yes. Sunny leans in. Can you give an example? Brie hesitates. That hesitation is visible, not performative, but careful. I think in past interviews or public moments, I've come across as very direct. And I've learned that directness can sometimes feel like distance. Whoopi nods slightly, almost approving of the honesty. But, Brie continues, that doesn't mean I don't care. It just means I communicate differently under pressure. A beat. Joy crosses her arms. But pressure is part of the job, Brie. Brie looks at her. I know. The response is immediate, but there's something in her tone now. A shift. Less defensive. More grounded. Whoopi notices it. That's the thing, Whoopi says quietly. Nobody's saying you don't know. The question is whether knowing is enough when people feel what they feel. Brie doesn't respond right away. The studio feels suspended again. Then she says, "So what would you have me do?" It's not challenging. It's not rhetorical. It's genuine. That changes everything for a moment. Whoopi leans back slightly. The question lands differently than expected. Even Joy glances toward her. For a brief second, the panel isn't debating anymore. They're recalibrating. Sunny answers first. Listen more than you speak sometimes. Brie nods. I do listen. Joy adds quickly. Not in the moment. After the fact doesn't always help. A murmur in the audience. Brie absorbs it, then responds quietly. But if I stay silent in the moment, I'm also criticized for that. That line creates a visible split in the room's reaction. Whoopi raises a hand slightly, not interrupting, but guiding. That's the trap, she says. No matter what you do, someone is going to have an opinion about it. Brie looks at her. So then what's the right answer? Whoopi holds her gaze. There isn't one. That answer lands heavier than anything before it. A silence follows, not uncomfortable now, but reflective. Like the entire studio is briefly acknowledging something bigger than the conversation itself. Brie leans back slightly in her chair. The tension hasn't disappeared, but it has changed shape. And then Whoopi adds, softer. But how you sit in it, that's what people remember. The audience goes quiet again, but this time it feels different. Because now the confrontation isn't escalating. It's deepening. And somewhere beneath the lights, beneath the cameras, beneath the polished rhythm of daytime television, something unspoken is still building, waiting for its final turn. The atmosphere inside the studio has transformed completely. What started as a celebrity interview now feels like something far more personal. Two worlds colliding in real time under bright lights neither side can escape. The audience senses it too. Nobody shifts in their seats anymore. Nobody whispers. Even the camera operators seem slower, careful not to interrupt the tension unfolding at the table. Brie Larson sits still, but the stillness no longer feels defensive. It feels deliberate. Whoopi Goldberg studies her quietly, almost like she's trying to decide whether Brie is finally dropping the polished version of herself or simply learning how to survive the room. Joy Behar breaks the silence first. You know what's interesting? She says, leaning back slightly. People at home are probably splitting into teams right now. A few audience members laugh nervously. Joy continues. Some think you're being unfairly targeted. Others think this is the first time someone's actually challenging you directly. Brie nods faintly. That's usually how these things go. But does that frustrate you? Sunny asks immediately. The idea that everything becomes sides? Brie lets out a small breath through her nose. Yeah, it does. Her voice is quieter now, stripped of performance. Because the second people pick sides, she says, nobody's listening anymore. They're just waiting for their turn to defend whoever they already chose. That answer lands harder than expected. Even Joy pauses. Whoopi folds her hands together. But that's television too. Brie looks at her. I know. Whoopi's expression softens just slightly. Do you? A pause. Then Brie says something that changes the room. I think I've spent years trying to prove I deserve to be in rooms like this. The audience goes silent. Not because the statement is dramatic, but because it sounds honest. Brie continues carefully, like she's surprising herself by saying it out loud. When people constantly question your tone, your intentions, your personality, eventually you start walking into every conversation already bracing for impact. Sunny's face shifts first. The sharpness in her posture eases. But Joy still looks unconvinced. Everybody in entertainment gets criticized. I know, Brie replies quickly. I'm not saying I'm unique. Then why does it sound personal? Joy asks. That question hits immediately. Brie looks down for the first time since the interview began. Just briefly. Just enough for the audience to notice. Because it is personal, she says quietly. The room stills again. Whoopi watches her carefully now, not as an opponent, but as someone deciding whether the wall in front of her is finally cracking. Brie lifts her eyes again, voice steadier. When people reduce you to headlines long enough, you start wondering if there's any point explaining yourself at all. Sunny nods slowly. That I understand. Joy glances towards Sunny with surprise. Brie notices too. I'm not asking everyone to like me, Brie says. I genuinely don't expect that. But sometimes it feels like people decided who I was years ago and stopped allowing me to be human after that. The audience reaction is quieter this time, more emotional than reactive. Whoopi finally leans forward again. But you do understand why people respond strongly to public figures, right? Yes, Brie says immediately, especially when those figures speak with certainty. Brie nods again. Yes. Whoopi's voice remains calm, because certainty can sound powerful or arrogant. Depends on who's hearing it. Brie absorbs that in silence. Then she surprises everyone. You think I sound arrogant? The audience collectively inhales. Whoopi doesn't rush her answer. I think, she says slowly, sometimes you sound like someone who learned to protect herself by staying emotionally 10 steps ahead of everyone else. The studio goes completely silent. Even Joy looks caught off guard. Brie blinks hard once. Whoopi continues gently now, but without backing away. And when people can't reach you emotionally, they fill in the blanks themselves. That lands deeper than any accusation could have. For the first time all interview, Brie seems unable to immediately respond. Her composure remains intact, but her eyes change. The audience notices it instantly. There's emotion there now. Not tears. Not breakdown. Just exhaustion finally visible beneath control. Sunny speaks softly. That's a hard thing to hear on live television. Brie gives a faint smile without humor. Yeah, it is. A nervous laugh moves through the crowd, then fades quickly. Joy crosses her arms again, though less aggressively this time. So what happens now? Brie looks toward her. What do you mean? I mean after this, Joy says. Because clips are going viral already. People online are going to tear this apart frame by frame. The mention of social media changes the energy instantly. Everyone knows she's right. Brie exhales slowly. Honestly, Whoopi nods once. Honestly. Brie looks out toward the audience for the first time. I think people are tired, she says quietly. Tired of celebrities pretending they're perfect. Tired of interviews that feel fake. Tired of everyone performing all the time. Her voice becomes firmer. And maybe I'm tired too. The audience reaction is immediate. Not loud applause, but something rarer. Recognition. Whoopi studies her carefully. Then she asks the question nobody expects. So who's the real Brie Larson? The studio freezes. Brie laughs softly under her breath, but there's sadness in it. That's the problem, she says. I don't think people want the real version. I think they want the version that confirms what they already believe. Joy opens her mouth to respond, but Whoopi subtly raises a hand. Not yet. Whoopi's eyes stay locked on Brie's. And what if you're wrong? The question hangs in the air like smoke. Brie stares back at her for a long moment. Cameras zoom closer. Audience members lean forward unconsciously. For the first time all interview, Brie looks genuinely uncertain. And that uncertainty, the absence of polish, the absence of perfect control, changes the emotional gravity of the room completely. Because now this isn't about winning anymore. It's about exposure. And somewhere backstage, producers are already realizing this conversation has gone far beyond daytime television. Backstage monitors glow with chaos. Producers whisper over one another. Assistants stare at phones lighting up faster every second. Social media clips from the interview are already spreading across platforms before the segment has even officially ended. Hashtags begin climbing. Split-screen reactions flood timelines. Some viewers praise Brie Larson for staying composed under pressure. Others accuse her of avoiding accountability until she was cornered. Inside the studio, though, none of that noise has fully arrived yet. Not officially. The cameras are still rolling. And the silence hanging between Brie Larson and Whoopi Goldberg has become the kind of silence people remember years later. Whoopi's final question still lingers in the air. What if you're wrong? Brie sits motionless for a moment, eyes fixed on the table instead of the audience now. For the first time since walking onto the set, she looks less like a celebrity and more like someone caught between defending herself and finally admitting how exhausting it has become. The audience waits. Nobody coughs. Nobody moves. Then Brie slowly lifts her head. Maybe I am wrong sometimes. The room shifts instantly. Not dramatically. Not explosively. But deeply. Because those words don't sound rehearsed. They sound expensive. Whoopi watches carefully, saying nothing. Brie continues quietly, her voice steadier with every sentence. I think when you spend enough years being criticized publicly, you start building armor without realizing it. And eventually the armor starts speaking before you do. Even Joy Behar's expression softens slightly. Sunny folds her hands together, listening differently now. Brie gives a small laugh under her breath, but it carries no humor. And maybe after a while, you stop hearing people clearly because you're too busy preparing for the attack. That line lands hard with the audience. Several people nod instinctively. Whoopi finally responds, her tone calm and stripped of confrontation. That happens to a lot of people. Brie looks at her. Yeah, but most people don't do it in front of millions. A wave of nervous laughter moves through the room. Whoopi smiles faintly for the first time all interview. Fair point. The tension breaks just enough for everyone to breathe again. But then Joy asks the question nobody expected her to ask. Do you regret anything? The audience instantly reacts. Brie pauses. Not because she's shocked, but because she's choosing honesty carefully now. Yes, she says. The room quiets again. I regret moments where I reacted from frustration instead of understanding. I regret times I assumed people understood what I meant without me actually communicating it well. Sunny nods slowly. But, Brie adds firmly, I don't regret caring. I don't regret speaking up. And I don't regret trying, even when I get it wrong. That earns applause. Real applause this time. Not forced. Not divided. Whoopi lets it happen. Then she says something that changes the emotional direction of the entire interview one final time. You know, she says softly, people don't connect to perfection. They connect to honesty. Brie's eyes flicker slightly at that. Whoopi continues. The problem with fame is eventually you start thinking you have to survive every conversation instead of simply being in it. A long silence follows. And this time, Brie smiles genuinely. Small. Tired. Human. I think I forgot that. The audience applauds again, louder now. Not because someone won. Because suddenly the conversation stopped feeling like a fight. For a brief moment, it became real. Backstage, producers exchange stunned looks. They know this clip is going everywhere. Not the sharpest argument. Not the most viral insult. The vulnerability. That's the part people replay. Joy shakes her head with a reluctant grin. Well, this got a lot deeper than I expected at 10 in the morning. Laughter finally spreads naturally through the studio. Even Brie laughs now. Sunny leans toward her. For what it's worth, I think people respond better when they feel invited into your humanity instead of your certainty. Brie nods thoughtfully. I'll remember that. Whoopi glances toward the audience, then back to Brie. And audiences are smarter than celebrities think. They can tell when someone's performing. Brie smirks slightly. I guess they can also tell when someone's terrified. That line gets the biggest reaction of the day. Because suddenly the entire interview rewrites itself in everyone's mind. The confidence. The defensiveness. The tension. It wasn't arrogance alone. It was fear mixed with pressure, broadcast live under studio lights. As the segment begins wrapping up, the audience rises into applause once more. Longer this time. Warmer. Not unanimous. But genuine. Whoopi reaches across the table and briefly touches Brie's hand. A small gesture, but enough to send the room into another emotional silence. Thank you for staying in the conversation, Whoopi says quietly. Brie nods once. Thank you for not making it easy. The cameras catch everything. The exhausted smile. The relieved laughter. The strange mutual respect that somehow emerged from confrontation instead of comfort. And by the time the show cuts to commercial, the internet is already exploding. Clips flood TikTok within minutes. Whoopi breaks Brie Larson's wall. Brie Larson's most honest interview ever. The View audience stunned into silence. Comment sections become battlefields instantly. Some viewers accuse the hosts of cornering Brie unfairly. Others praise Whoopi for forcing a real conversation instead of another polished celebrity interview. Media outlets rush to publish think pieces before the episode even finishes airing on the West Coast. But one thing becomes undeniable. People are watching, not because of scandal, because for one uncomfortable, emotional hour, daytime television stopped feeling scripted. And somewhere later that night, long after the cameras shut off and the headlines multiply, viewers are still replaying one particular moment in their minds. Maybe I am wrong sometimes. Not because it sounded weak, because it sounded real. And sometimes reality is more explosive than any argument. So what do you think? Was Brie Larson unfairly judged? Or did Whoopi Goldberg finally say what others were afraid to say? Share your opinion in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for the Echo View for more explosive celebrity confrontations, emotional showdowns, and dramatic stories from inside the world of daytime television.